The restaurant manager crossed her arms and said the words again, louder this time. "I'm sorry, but we don't have any tables available." Margaret stood there in her best dress, the one she'd been saving for something special, watching families laugh and eat at half-empty tables all around her. It was her 80th birthday. She'd saved for 3 months just to afford this one meal. And now, standing in the doorway of the nicest restaurant in town, she could feel every pair of eyes on her worn shoes, her outdated purse, the slight tremor in her hands as she clutched her reservation confirmation. The manager's smile never reached her eyes as she waited for Margaret to leave. If this story touched something in you, we'd love for you to subscribe to True Kindness Tales and join our community of people who believe in the power of human goodness. Hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories of kindness matter, and we can't wait to hear them. Now, let me tell you what happened next. Margaret had been looking forward to this day for months. Her husband had passed away 6 years ago, and her daughter lived 3 states away with her own family. Birthdays had become quiet affairs. Usually just Margaret and a cupcake from the grocery store. Maybe a phone call that lasted 10 minutes before her daughter had to rush off to soccer practice or piano lessons. But 80 felt different somehow. 80 felt like a milestone that deserved more than a microwave dinner and an evening of game shows. So she'd made a plan. She'd seen the restaurant featured in the local newspaper. A charming Italian place with white tablecloths and candles on every table. The kind of place she and Robert used to dream about going to for their anniversary. She'd called weeks in advance, made a reservation, and confirmed it twice. She'd even splurged on getting her hair done that morning, sitting in the salon chair feeling a little foolish but also hopeful. When the hostess had first told her there were no tables, Margaret thought it was a simple mistake. She'd pulled out the confirmation, email she'd printed and carefully folded in her purse. But the young woman barely glanced at it before calling over the manager, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s who looked at Margaret the way you might look at a stray dog that had wandered in from the street. "Our system shows no reservation under your name," the manager said, even though Margaret was pointing right at it on the paper. Around them, the restaurant hummed with conversation and the clinking of glasses. Margaret counted at least 4 empty tables from where she stood. "But I called. I spoke to someone," "I confirmed," Margaret said, hating how small her voice sounded. The manager's expression didn't change. "Perhaps you called a different restaurant." "We're fully booked tonight." Margaret felt heat rising to her cheeks. She wasn't a confrontational person. She'd spent her whole life avoiding scenes, keeping her head down, being polite. But something about standing there on her 80th birthday, being dismissed like she didn't matter, made her want to fight back. "I know I called here. I have the confirmation. Can't you just check if maybe there's been a mistake?" "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. You're blocking the entrance." The manager's voice was cold now, professional detachment masking something that looked uncomfortably like contempt. That's when Margaret noticed the couple behind her. Young, dressed in expensive casual clothes, the man already pulling out his wallet. "They didn't have a reservation," she heard the woman say. "They were just hoping to get lucky." And just like that, the manager's face transformed into warm hospitality. "Let me see what I can do for you," she said to them, then turned back to Margaret. "Ma'am, please." Margaret felt something crack inside her chest. She turned to leave, blinking back tears, when a voice stopped her. "Excuse me, is everything okay here?" She looked up to see a man in his mid-30s, tall and tired-looking, with a little girl holding his hand. The girl couldn't have been more than 7, wearing a dress with stars on it and clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. The manager's smile returned. "Everything's fine. Just a small confusion. Now, if you have a reservation." "I couldn't help but overhear," the man said. And Margaret noticed his voice was gentle but firm. "You're telling this lady you don't have tables, but you're about to seat these folks who don't have a reservation?" The manager's jaw tightened. "Sir, that's really not your concern." "Daddy, why is the lady crying?" the little girl whispered, but in the awkward silence everyone heard it. Margaret quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm just going to go." But the man didn't move. "We have a reservation for 2. Under Mitchell." He paused, looking at Margaret, really seeing her in a way that made her throat tighten. "But I'd like to give our table to this lady instead." The manager blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Our reservation. She can have it. He looked down at his daughter. What do you think, Emma? Should we let the birthday lady have our special table? The little girl's eyes went wide. It's your birthday? How old are you? 80, Margaret whispered. Wow, that's really old. That's really special. Emma tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, we should definitely give her our table. It's her birthday and she's all alone and that's really sad. Emma, her father said gently, but he was smiling. The manager looked like she wanted to argue, but the scene was already drawing attention. Other diners were watching now. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. Right this way. Margaret didn't know what to say. The man, Marcus, just gave her a kind smile. Happy birthday, he said simply. But as the manager started to lead Margaret away, Emma burst into tears. But, Daddy, I wanted to have our special dinner. You promised. Marcus knelt down, pulling his daughter close. I know, sweetheart, I know. We'll come back another time. Margaret watched this man comforting his crying child, giving up whatever plans they'd made, and she couldn't do it. She couldn't take this from them. Wait, she said. What if we shared the table? If that's okay. I'd rather not eat alone anyway. Emma stopped crying and looked up at her father. Marcus looked surprised, then thoughtful. Are you sure? We don't want to intrude on your birthday. I'd like the company, Margaret said, and she meant it. That dinner became something Margaret would treasure for the rest of her life. She learned that Marcus was a single father, that Emma's mother had passed away when Emma was 3, that they'd been planning this dinner for weeks as a celebration because Emma had finally learned to read chapter books all by herself. Emma showed Margaret her stuffed rabbit, Thumper, and told her elaborate stories about his adventures. Marcus asked Margaret about her life, and actually listened to the answers, laughing at her stories about teaching 2nd grade for 40 years. When the waiter brought out a small birthday cake with a single candle, Margaret learned that Marcus had quietly arranged it. Emma insisted on singing Happy Birthday at the top of her lungs, completely off-key. Other diners turned to look, and this time Margaret didn't mind at all. She was crying again, but these were different tears. Thank you, she told Marcus as the evening wound down. You didn't have to do any of this. He shook his head. My mother would have been about your age if she were still here. I'd like to think someone would have done the same for her. 3 weeks later, Margaret received a letter in the mail. It was from Emma, written in careful, crooked handwriting. Dear Miss Margaret, thank you for sharing your birthday with us. You are my friend now. Love, Emma. P.S. Thumper says hi. Margaret kept that letter on her refrigerator. She also kept Marcus's phone number, and once a month she joined them for dinner. Sometimes at restaurants, sometimes just pizza on their living room floor while Emma read to her from whatever book she was obsessed with that week. Her 80th birthday had started with rejection and ended with connection. It reminded her that kindness isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just a man noticing someone in pain and choosing to help. Sometimes it's a little girl willing to share her special night. Sometimes it's finding family in unexpected places. That manager probably never thought twice about turning Margaret away that night. But Marcus and Emma's simple act of kindness created ripples that kept spreading. Margaret started volunteering at the children's library where Emma went for story time. She reconnected with old teaching colleagues she'd lost touch with. She stopped spending her evenings alone, stopped feeling invisible, because someone had seen her when she needed it most. So if you see someone being overlooked, dismissed, or treated as less than they deserve, maybe you have the power to change their story. Maybe your kindness is exactly what someone needs to remember they matter. It doesn't take much to see people, really see them, and choose compassion. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment of unexpected kindness? Share your story in the comments. The world needs more moments like these, and they start with each of us choosing to care.